Glad you could join us. Are there any public comments registered for today?
I did not hear any public comments. Did not hear
I'll still ask for it, but
any requests. Yeah.
The streaming is working.
Thanks, Kathleen.
good morning, everyone. I think we'll give another minute just to make sure everybody gets logged in. Well, good morning, everyone. Hoping we get some good moisture coming up today and tomorrow for everyone. We'll go ahead and start off with roll call. Have Aaron call our roll call.
Welcome, everybody. Start off with Central Front Room.
Leo Evans here.
Easton.
Gary Beatty.
Grand Valley NPO.
Sue Hansen here.
Dr. Cobb.
Emily Bear, present.
And Jacob Rieger.
Gunnison Valley.
Aaron, we can't hear you completely. You're a little muddled.
Oh, okay. Gunnison Valley. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bill Jenkins, North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Intermountain.
Brian Pettit's present.
Northwest.
Okay, we barely could hear you, Brian.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Something cut out.
But you are present. Pikes Peak,
Holly Williams here with John Leosatos and Danielle Miller from PPCG.
Pueblo Area Council of Governments.
Ed Hernandez here.
And I'm here too, Eva Cosaleon, MPO manager.
San Luis Valley,
Yeah, Vern Hersink is here.
South Central,
Good morning, Brian Blasi here, and also Commissioner Mitch Wardell.
Southeast,
Stephanie Gonzalez here.
Southern Ute Indian Tribe, Southwest,
Alvarez here.
Upper Front Range,
Good morning, Tim Malone, present.
Ute Mountain Ute,
Brendan Adams here.
and I believe, okay, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Yep.
Can't hear you, Aaron. You're muddled again. And North Front Range is on the call.
Yeah,
Yep.
North Front Range. Yeah, thank you.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair. Let me see if I can fix my audio.
Thank you. All right, are there any public comments? We didn't have anybody pre-registered, but would ask it anyway. Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on to the approval of the February meeting minutes that were presented by email. Would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, minutes will be approved as presented. Transportation Commission report. They met on February 18th and 19th. They had a joint TC CTIO workshop, had presentation on the Floyd Hill project and how it's going. Very big project. Was interesting to see that. If you're interested in it, I'd encourage you to go look at the live stream of the meetings. They had a video and things of it. The CTIO and TC also met about Mustang funding, looking at a major shortfall coming up for Mustang funding in the years to come, up to 30 million or more. We'll have a presentation on that later in our meeting, so I won't go into detail on that. They had a condemnation authorization request for a orphan parcel, I'd call it. Interesting that you have small little tracts of land out there that run into our CDOT projects. So they're trying to figure out how to address that, or they start a process on that to get that for a project. Had the budget workshop, which we'll also be having in this meeting. So I won't go over that. And Bridge and Tunnel had their budget workshop. And also they're pursuing DOT better utilizing investment to leverage development, a build program grant. That'll be for Spear and I-25 bridges, potentially. Looking to try to get a grant to help fund that project. And then had a Fuels Impact Enterprise workshop for their budget. They get 15 million a year to go toward projects, and had projects scattered around the state. Majority of that funding does go into the metropolitan areas to address fuel, transport, and infrastructure within different areas of the state. So, and then they had a presentation on the Hinsdale County off-highway vehicle permit, which allows OHV vehicles to run on state highways up there to connect some trails. That's been going on for quite a few years, and they have seemed to get it to be working really well with very few negative impacts for that, and addressing the safety concerns of running OHVs on state highways. And those were the main workshop items, and the agenda approval items pretty much followed that. So, any questions for me on Transportation Commission? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Transit and Rail Advisory Committee. Anne, are you on? I did not look through. Nobody saw Anne get on today, so I don't think they've had another meeting, so they probably don't have an update. Okay, we'll start off with our TPR reports.
I have been waiting for our insurance agent to respond to us.
Somebody's mic is on. So, Central Front Range, your TPR report.
Good morning. Central Front Range has not met since the last STAC meeting. We will meet again in April, so we don't have much to report. Have been working on getting responses compiled and sent over for, let's say, Senate Bill 25-30 that had the active transportation project lists, and working on membership to try to get a STAC alternate identified. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Grand Valley.
All right, good morning. So we had a board meeting last month and we did a TIP amendment. We also have been working on approval for the property transfer for the mobility hub. That will go to the TC, I believe, next month. And our board also approved a letter of support for the Basics Act and the support that it gives to MPOs. Something exciting that we recently released is our data crash data dashboard, which takes a lot of the state data, but just makes it a lot usable. So encourage everyone to check that out and play around with that a little bit. And then lastly, we released 2 annual reports recently, one about the RTPO and then one about our safety task force. And so we've taken this opportunity to visit all the boards in our area, which there's 4 different boards, city council, commissioners, to just give an update on safety in our area and use that as an opportunity to spread awareness about the challenges with impaired driving and speeding and other safety issues in our community. So trying to do kind of more outreach to bring more awareness on that issue. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Greater Denver, Dr. Todd.
Good morning. My name is Emily Bear. This is my first STAC meeting. So I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to join in this morning. At its February 18th meeting, the DRCOG board elected its new chair, Mayor Colleen Whitlow from Meade, and other board officers, including and selected members serve on internal and external committees, including this one. So this is why my first meeting, and wanted to say hello to Mayor Mills from Brighton. He'll be the alternate, and he's also on the call. We adopted the 26 through 29 Transportation Improvement Program policy amendments, adopted project funding recommendations for the community-based transportation planning and innovative mobility tip set-asides. We adopted 2026 federal safety targets, discussed and took positions on state legislative issues. We received an informational briefing from State Senator Matt Ball on a planned legislative bill addressing the recommendations of the RTD Accountability Committee. We received an informational briefing on the Urban Land Institute's Local Government Technical Assistance Program. And we received an informational briefing on the fiscal year 2029 through 2032 Transportation Improvement Program kickoff. And that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you and welcome. Gunnison Valley.
Good morning, everybody. Sue Hansen here. Not much to update. We just set our meeting schedule for the year, so more to come in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Intermountain, Brian.
Yes, we haven't had a meeting since the last STAC, so our next TPR meeting is April 3rd. So we'll be meeting then and be electing a new chair and new vice chair.
Thank you. North Front Range.
Yes, we had our last meeting on February 5th, where we approved the January TIP amendment and discussed upcoming MMOF and RMS funding project deadlines. We also submitted comments to the EPA requesting a 60-day extension for public comment period on the proposed changes in the CAFE standards. And finally, the Planning Council supported and our MPO staff submitted a proposal to the Air Quality Enterprise for funding of a fall 2026 ozone conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Northwest.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect. This is Brian with Northwest TPR. Yeah, our next meeting will be after the next STAC meeting on April 9th. STAC meeting on April 2nd. And we will likely be doling out the remainder of our MMOF funds between one or possibly two projects. And that's pretty much all I have. Just keep your fingers crossed we get the foot of snow that's supposed to come tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you. Pikes Peak.
Morning. Okay, good morning. There we go. A little slow. So let's see. We have made an important milestone in getting our airport and Powers traffic up and onto the bridge over Powers to the Western Gate. Entrance to the Peterson Air Force Base. This is a smoother military access benefit. And this is actually a local project. This one says CDOT, I think, but we're working on improvements at US 24/Peterson Boulevard to coordinate all of our projects together with military bases. Then we also have our certified safety action plan out for public comment. It's developed through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program and covers El Paso, Teller, and Park counties. And the City of Colorado Springs and the City of Fountain are also wrapping up their individual safety action plans. And we did have a Front Range passenger Rail Town Hall on February 26th, and Lan Rao of Mountain Metro presented the station location study. I heard that was very, very well attended, so that's exciting that we have a lot of interest down here. And also in February, we went back to the National Association of Metropolitan Councils. We ran into Ron Papsdorf from formerly of Dr. Cog, but we have been doing some advocating for the BUILD Act and the Surface Transportation Reauthorization. Then we went back again for NACO, and I know that Kristen Stevens, who's on this call this morning, Commissioner Kristen Stevens from Larimer, is now one of our vice chairs of a NACO committee on transportation. And so we also have done some advocating for the Surface Transportation Reauthorization through the National Association of Counties. So we've been busy this past month. So, and we are looking forward to any snow and rain that anyone can send over our way. Thank you.
Thank you. Pueblo area.
Good morning. So we passed a couple of TIP resolutions. One of them was to award CTE funds to public transit for the expansion of service hours, which is really going to be helpful in our region. Even just a couple hours expanding that service hours will be helpful. We had a really good presentation from Eric Erebar and Patrick Gerton about the advanced construction funding and state infrastructure bank. And we are also going to be having a Front Range passenger rail town hall this Sunday. And that's it from us.
Thank you. San Luis Valley.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Vern Hersink, San Luis Valley TPR Chair. We had a meeting on February 26th where I was selected to remain the chair, and Jean Glover will continue to be the vice chair. Other than that, it was business as usual. End of report.
Thank you. Southeast.
Good morning. We've not had a TPR meeting since the last meeting, but I did attend the joint TPR meeting in February. We did approve some RPP funding over an email vote to move a project in Baca County that will be ratified at our next meeting. And this was in support of programming some RPP funding in that direction. And our next meeting is April 22nd.
Thank you. Did anyone join from Southern Ute Indian Tribe?
Chairman, you missed South Central.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, South Central.
Okay, good morning. So our next meeting is May 28th in Trinidad. So we haven't met since our last report. We were invited to the Northeast New Mexico Transportation Planning Organization on February 25th in Raton, New Mexico, to discuss reaching across state lines with a regional transportation plan involving Northeast New Mexico and South Central Colorado, including the new I-27 expansion through Northeast New Mexico that will eventually feed into I-25. Raton, and we'd also like to include Raton Pass projects to help both states, since we share the border on both sides on Raton Pass. And also they're interested in hopefully expanding the Front Range passenger rail down into New Mexico. So maybe if we could work together for collaboration through that. And we will continue to work with the plan with Northeast New Mexico TPO. But that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about skipping you.
No worries.
Page where I flipped it. So, okay, Southern Ute. Anyone join?
Yes. Good morning, Mandy Brown, Southern Ute. We have no updates at this time. Thank you.
Southwest.
We did have a meeting in February. Several agencies in our area have sent letters to the Joint Budget Committee in favor of maintaining MMOF funds for local agencies. And we also amended our meeting schedule to quarterly moving forward. And that is all we have.
Okay, thank you. Upper Front Range.
Good morning again, Tim Malone, Upper Front Range TPR. Our next meeting is going to be this afternoon. We are looking at presentation and adoption of the Upper Front Range TPR 2050 Human Services and Transit Plan. And that's all I have.
Okay. Ute Mountain.
Good morning, Brendan Adams, Transportation Planner. We don't have anything new to report.
Okay. For Eastern, we don't have anything to report either. We have not met. We are meeting next Monday, so have a report next week or next month. Any reports from our federal partners? Federal highways or federal transit? Okay. Didn't see any of them on, so. All righty. Up next will be our legislative report, and we'll start with Emily.
Good morning,
She's
all.
on. Okay, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everyone. Emily Hadaway, Legislative Liaison for CDOT. Thanks for having me today. I'll start with just a few updates on bills and then end with the update on Multimodal Options Fund. HB 26-1237, CDOT's agency bill, transportation safety modifications has been introduced. It includes CDOT's right-of-way provision and also changes some references, statutory references from accident to crash, which is the more neutral accepted terminology by advocates and just per industry standard. That is scheduled in House Committee next week on March 11th, so I'll be testifying in support of that bill. HB 26-1076, our other agency bill, Transportation Statutory Cleanups, is scheduled for a Senate hearing on March 18th. It has passed the House. HB 26-1127, reporting after fatal car crash. That is a bill that emerged out of the Joint Task Force on Drunk and Impaired Driving that CDOT participates in, as well as a variety of other agencies. That bill has passed second reading on the House floor and is one that we testified in support of a few weeks ago. So we're tracking that one closely. HB 26-1101, we also testified in support of. That is criminal offenses related to critical infrastructure metals. We did get one clarifying amendment in there as well, but in general, we're very supportive of the bill. It creates felonies around stealing commodity metals and also transferring them. So basically add some new tracking systems for scrap yards, because we see quite a lot of impacts from commodity metal theft to our infrastructure. Other updates from the past few weeks. HB 26-1086 adjusts subdivision access to state highway system was postponed indefinitely. The state and local unmanned aircraft bill was also postponed indefinitely. I know that was one that CML was opposed to. And then local government vehicle identification on interstate highways. We worked on an amendment on that bill, but now we are comfortable with it. So that one's been moving through the process. Recently, a bill was introduced to repeal the retail delivery fee. That's more of a little bit more of a messaging bill, but it's definitely one that we will engage in. And we opposed last year. It's the same bill draft this year. We will plan on opposing that again next week. And then lastly, just I know a lot of you are closely tracking the JBC decisions on multimodal options fund. So just to kind of recap what's happened in the past month. On February 6th was JBC's figure setting for CDOT. They did accept our decision item to increase spending authority to align with the balance of the fund, so we were at risk of losing spending authority. And they also approved a JBC staff recommendation to extend roll forward authority from 3 years to 6. But they also made the determination to eliminate the $10.5 million annual general fund transfer. That was not something that was included in the governor's annual budget. It was also something that we had talked about in the last few months. I know STAC had put together a letter that we had all worked on to urge the JBC to maintain that funding. A lot of stakeholder groups had also sent letters. Unfortunately, that was just something that they had some discussion about, the hard cuts that they had to make this year. I do not envy the position that they're in. There are some incredibly tough cuts in front of them to make. And they determined, since Multimodal Options Fund also has retail delivery fee revenue, that it doesn't make sense to put general fund revenue to that fund as well. That originally there was a little bit of confusion about whether that would be a permanent elimination or just a one-time elimination. SB 260 had determined that funding would be in place, I believe, for 10, 12 years, something along those lines. I'd have to look at the exact language. But they did ultimately decide yesterday, when they were reviewing the first bill draft, that they wanted to eliminate that fund, that transfer permanently. There was a few members that had referenced the outreach that they've received from locals, and should we consider maybe just pausing for 2 years and resuming it? But ultimately, they reached consensus that they would eliminate that fund permanently. They also had some discussion a few weeks ago. We have not seen a bill draft on this, but they had some discussion as well about not wanting to deepen the upcoming Bustang funding gap. So CDOT does allocate our 15% of the multimodal options fund to Bustang. That additional $1 million, of course, does not fully keep us whole from the upcoming Bustang funding gap that Kay will speak to later in the agenda. But they did speak to not wanting to impact Mustang service through the elimination of the general fund transfer. So there is some discussion that they're having around changing that allocation. Again, that's not something that came from CDOT. That is a discussion that they have reached on their own. We haven't seen a bill draft of what that would look like. That would be a separate bill from the general fund transfer elimination. So we're waiting to see that bill draft. So I think there's a lot to come. Nothing is set in stone until the long bill is signed. The governor's office also hasn't done comebacks, so we're still having discussions on that. But we also recognize that it is a very tough budget year, and it's very hard to fight for funding right now, given that they have, $1 billion budget deficit. So it's a tough spot to be in. I know our staff as well is also looking at what the process would look like if this does move forward, so that we can support our local partners as best we can. I think that the process will probably be similar to the reconciliation process of last year, but there's still a lot more to come on that as we figure out what exactly this will look like as it moves through the process. So happy to answer any questions, but wanted to be completely transparent about what has transpired so far in the JBC.
Any questions for Emily? Yeah, Kristen.
Yeah, so Emily, with those cuts to MMOF, and many of us had done that exercise of trying to figure out how to fund projects that weren't funded, and some of it we get allocated dollars for out years. Those dollars are, I'm assuming, are part of that $10 million, and they won't be coming in, so we will likely have to do that exercise again, and maybe not count on them to be
Right.
available ever, or at least in the foreseeable future. So that's an exercise we'll all have to go back to our TPRs and MPOs to do again for those projects that got money in the out years. Is that right?
That's my understanding, is that it's basically a similar reconciliation process. Again, I think there's a lot more to determine on this, but be similar to prior year, and just looking at the base funding that will be coming in from the retail delivery fee and not accounting for general fund in future years. But Michael, I'll let you chime in if you have anything you'd like to add on that.
Yeah, it's you said it. There's an awful lot of unknowns still, and we don't really know where to land. But the analysis that we've basically done is that the general funds comprise a little bit less than half of the annual funds coming to the MMOF program. So the fact that there may be shifting between the state allocation and the local program allocation makes it pretty hard to know exactly where that'll land. But I think for people that just have that in mind, if you can imagine half of the funds in 2027, 28, and 29 that have already been awarded to projects, there'll be an exercise to either decide if those awards are all kept whole by stretching them out to the subsequent years of 2030, 31, and 32, or if that causes some projects to have to just kind of cancel altogether, or if MPOs and TPRs wish to reprioritize some and actually take back some. There'll be a lot of decisions to be made. It's impossible to say what that looks like for everybody. It's different for every project, and it'll be different for every region. But it is possible to keep them whole, but in other words, keep all the currently awarded projects whole. But it means the funding will not be available for all of them to be implemented until we get all the way into 2032. So you can kind of surmise for yourself what that means to projects. Some projects may not be a great delay, maybe, right? Some projects just take that long to really get off the ground. Others will actually have to pause. And some may say, if we have to pause, we actually have to just turn back the MMOF grant and figure out a different way to fund it. So all kinds of ways that this may play out, and we'll bring to you as much analysis and information as you need to make those decisions as the awarding agencies when we have more final numbers to work with. So,
okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, one last thing, Kristen. Sorry. I mean, the questions coming to me and to us all the time are, what do we do? Northwest was just talking about awarding their final funds. And it may sound counterintuitive, but the best thing to do is to make sure go ahead and award those funds out through 29, as every other TPR and MPO has. And projects should just proceed because we are making the funds available to projects when they are ready, even if it means advancing their future year's awards. All awardees should just proceed as normal for now. If they can get going, and we make the funds available to them, that is how it'll play out. And those projects that are later to be ready to initiate, those will be the ones that likely have to wait a year or 2 or even 3 till their funds are available. That all makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing is about half the dollars come from retail delivery service fees, and half was from general fund and the general fund dollars will not be there, although there might be $1 million of that towards Mustang. Is that right?
Yeah. The retail fees kind of slowly grow. They're projected to have a growth, slightly upward curve. So the 10.5 million becomes a little bit less than half and a little bit less more every year. But right, as we've heard, they want to change the proportions of the remaining 50% of funds, change how that's split. So it'll be a slightly more than 50% loss to the local program.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Yeah, I'm changing the subject, Mr. Chair, so if anybody else wants to chime in on the MMOF. So Emily, on the I think the transit equity bill did drop. Is that something, because CDOT or Mustang is excluded from it, you guys aren't tracking, or is it something that's on your tracking list and you're engaging one way or another on that, or is it just a monitor at this point?
Thank you, John. It is on our tracking list. It is more of a monitor at this point, but I know the governor's office will put it in front of the governor to see if he wants to take a position on it, as we do with all bills. But since there isn't a direct implication on busing, it's not something that CDOT is active on right now, but we are tracking it closely. And I do know that it does have implications, of course, for our local transit partners, which has been a topic of conversation amongst legislators.
Yeah, thanks. It definitely does have a cost impact as it has been presented. I was hoping that the track report would have happened today to maybe go in a little more detail of where we're at that, but it is what it is. So thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thanks, John.
Any other questions of Emily? Okay. Not seeing any. Thank you, Emily, for the update.
Thanks so much. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, Jamie Grimm.
Good morning,
Anything?
everybody. I'm
Morning.
back and getting back to my transportation themed comedy routines. I did have a baby. I had a little boy named Caleb in November. Some people have let me know that they don't believe he exists. I had planned on bringing him on with me, but he fell asleep while he was on a walk with my husband this morning, and I'm not going to wake him up. So you guys are great, but I'm not waking him up for you. So anyway, to my report, if you are interested in pictures, I'm more than happy to share them with you. I just, it's like getting a new puppy. You want to show everybody your pictures. The puppies are cuter, but I still want to show everybody a picture of him. I know everybody's very concerned about what day it is. So it is name tag day, because why not? Apparently, according to the blurb, it makes a more human connection, and everyone should wear their name tag today to encourage conversation with people you haven't met. So have at it if you're going to be out and about. It is also, I will probably be celebrating this, National Cheese Doodle Day. And tomorrow is National Day of Unplugging. Today is also the day that the hula hoop was patented. So I don't know, somehow make those work together. Hula hoops, unplugging, and National Cheese Doodles. Federally, there are a lot of things going on, but we don't have a lot of specifics on them. So one thing we do have a lot of specifics on, the House and Senate Appropriations Committees have opened up their congressionally directed spending in the House and community project funding program in the, congressionally directed spending in the Senate, community project funding in the House. These are also historically known as earmarks. So we've got CDS, we've got CPF, and we've got earmarks. They are all the same thing. They just have different names because for some reason Congress did not want to make life easy for us. So if you have a local applicant or your organization is going to be applying to either a member of the House or one of the Senate offices for one of these appropriations programs, you are required to have a letter from CDOT stating that if funds are appropriated, we will add it to the STIP. It's not a letter of support. I call it a letter of certification, a letter of acknowledgement. It's basically just us telling the committee that we are aware of the project and we will administer the funds. So if you need one of those letters, please reach out to me. I'm coordinating that project. And the first due date for Congressman Neguse is due today. House members have their application due deadlines over the next 2 weeks because the House has given their members a very tight turnaround. My theory is to cut down on the number of applications they receive. I don't have anything to back that up. It seems like an insane turnaround. So the Senate offices are due at the end of March. So please let me know if you have any questions about that or if you need a letter. If you did not receive a letter for us by the time the member has their due date, you're fine. The member typically accepts the letter from us after the due date because it's sort of a wonky little requirement. So if you have anybody panicking, don't panic. Just come to me and we'll get it worked out. So CDS. We are continuing to monitor reauthorization. The leadership in the House had originally said they wanted a bill by Christmas time. We did not get that. Now they're saying by spring. Spring's kind of here, so we'll see what happens. In the Senate, they're hearing the same thing, but we have not seen any bill language drop yet. So they're still gathering. I think they're doing outreach, that kind of thing. One thing that we did see introduced in the House, it is a bipartisan bill, is the Basics Act, which, let me make sure I get it right. It is the Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Basics Act. I am so glad I was not in any of the meetings coming up with that acronym because it sounds like it was a headache. Basically what the Basics Act would do is it would pretty significantly change the way formula funding is divvied out between the states and the locals. Currently, we have a 75%, 25% split between with federal formula funding in various formats. 85 to the state, 15% to the locals. This would amend that to 75 and 25. It would also create a new federal bridge formula program, which is an extension of the bridge formula program that was created under IIJA, but it would increase the amount of funding and it would send more money towards local off-system bridges. This is essentially a funding formula bill. It doesn't necessarily increase funding by a considerable amount. It doesn't adjust the gas tax or anything like that. It adjusts how formula comes down into various entities. And so more money would be going to MPOs. It creates a program for funding for areas of less than 50,000 people to increase rural planning, which is something I hope we're actually already doing in Colorado pretty well. I don't know that happens in other states, but that would create a funding stream for those areas. And also changes some highway safety funding. Still digging into this. This got introduced like right as I got back to the office, and so we're keeping an eye on it. We have not taken a position on it. We're monitoring to see what happens. It's only in the House right now, and so there is not a Senate partner bill. And that is what I have. I hope that was enough confusing. Kristen.
Well, thanks, Jamie. Congratulations. And I don't know if I speak for everyone, but I certainly want to see baby pictures.
Oh, I'm surprised you haven't run into my mom yet. She's like running around Fort Collins showing everybody pictures and a video.
Well, now I hope I do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the report. Welcome back. Good to see you. One thing I do want to say about the Basics Act is the National Association of Counties staffer was one of the people responsible for drafting that bill. So I think those of us, Holly Williams and I, are both on that NACO Transportation Committee. We know a decent amount about that bill. So if there's folks that want to know, or Jamie, if there's anything you want to know, you probably know
Great. Thank
everything,
you.
but if you don't, I'm happy to share that information. Yeah, it was an attempt to get more funding down to the MPO level and the local government level. I'm sure CDOT, there's probably some conflict here, the elephant in the room. But anyway, I'm not sure if it'll, what'll happen in the Senate, but it has some bipartisan support, I think, in the House at least.
A Democrat and
Thanks.
a Republican. I'm going to butcher their names, so I'm not going to say them, but it was introduced by a Democrat and a Republican in the House.
That's right. Cool. Thanks.
Jacob.
Yeah. Hi, Jamie. Welcome back. It's so good to see you and congratulations. I will make the same offer to you. I serve on AMPO's policy committee. As you know, AMPO is part of the LOT Coalition along with the other organizations that have been mentioned that worked on the bill. I also know a fair amount about it. I'll actually be in DC in a couple of weeks. We'll be doing Hill visits like everyone else. So if you want to chat about the Basics Act, I'm happy to do that.
Great. I will be relying on you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate those offers.
Yeah, and I guess one point I'd make, and I think you kind of made it, Jamie, but just for everyone's clarification, there's been a little bit of, I'll say, misunderstanding. I think, there's a lot in the bill. It does increase funding levels for both states and locals. Yes, it is a formula bill. Yes, it changes some amounts about how the money flows, but it is meant to be an increasing the pie bill for everyone.
Good to hear. So we need more funding. Okay. Any other questions, comments on the federal update? Okay, not seeing anything.
Guys.
Thank you, Jamie, and congratulations. All right. I think we will go ahead and take a short break. We'll go ahead and give 10 minutes just to try to, if anybody else was going to join for the budget and other things, get us a little closer to time. So we'll take a 10-minute break and be back to continue with the budget discussion. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. I think we're ready for the budget presentation. So Jeff, welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
So yes, I'm going to brief you on the draft fiscal year 27 final annual budget. So we were before the STAC a couple of months ago to brief you on the 27 budget, and back again today. We will be bringing the budget to the commission for approval here in about I guess 2 weeks. So wanted to brief STAC on where the final budget for fiscal year 27 landed ahead of our request for approval with the Transportation Commission. So we can go ahead to the next slide. So I'm going to jump right in, kind of big picture. Looking at fiscal year 27. So again, this is the budget that would take effect beginning on July 1 for fiscal year 27. Looking across CDOT and the 5 CDOT affiliated enterprises, we're looking at about 2.3 billion in revenues in fiscal year 27. Those revenues are split out about 73% flowing to CDOT and about 27% to the enterprises. You can see the enterprises on the left-hand side of the screen, about 252 million in flowing to the CTIO, Colorado Transportation Investment Office, through toll and managed lane revenue, as well as through the congestion impact fee. That's the daily vehicle rental fee that was put in place a year or two ago for transit and rail purposes. A little over 200 million from the bridge and tunnel enterprise through bridge safety surcharge, bridge tunnel impact fee, and retail delivery fee. But 126 million to the clean transit enterprise, also funded through the retail delivery fee, as well as the oil and gas production fee that was put in place a couple of years ago, again for transit and rail purposes. And then the non-attainment enterprise also receiving funds from the retail delivery fee, as well as a rideshare fee on Lyft and Uber. And then finally, the fuels impact enterprise, which receives revenues through a fee on special fuels. So again, those enterprises in total representing about 27% of revenues in fiscal year 27 and about 73% CDOT. If you look on the right, you can see the revenues making up the CDOT side. Federal programs make up about half of CDOT revenues, or 35% of combined CDOT and enterprise revenues. That includes, that's funded through a combination of the federal gas tax as well as federal general fund. The Highway User Tax Fund, HUTF revenue, that's our primary source of flexible state funds, represents about 29% of overall revenues. HUTF is funded through fuel taxes and fees, vehicle registrations, faster fees, as well as a portion of the retail delivery fee. And then about 9% of overall revenues come from a variety of other state funding sources, including general fund, aviation fuel tax, and a variety of other miscellaneous revenues. So as we've discussed in the past, fiscal year 27 is a very tight budget year, as was fiscal year 26, or is fiscal year 26, the current fiscal year. So our 27 budget already reflects several reductions that were made last session to this upcoming budget. So that included some temporary reduction to faster safety revenues, as well as a reduction to our general fund transfer. Senate Bill 260 put in place a $100 million annual general fund transfer. That general fund transfer reduced significantly in 26 and reduced significantly again in 27, essentially cut in about half in fiscal year 27. So let's go on to the next slide. So looking at where that 2.3 billion in revenues is allocated in this draft 27 budget, about nearly 800 million, 783 million, or about 34% is allocated to our capital construction programs. So that includes our asset management programs, safety programs, our 10-year plan projects. A little over a quarter is allocated to maintenance and operations programs. So that's our MLOS program, that's the Orange Fleet out on the roads, plowing snow, fixing potholes, fixing guardrails. That also includes our various traffic operations programs, our real-time traffic operations programs, our ITS programs, courtesy patrol programs. About 20% of the fiscal year 27 revenues are ultimately sub-allocated out to locals, primarily to locals. That includes the funds that are sub-allocated to MPOs for project selection, as well as the various CDOT grant programs where we are making grants directly to locals, such as our aeronautics grant program, transit grant program, MMOF, revitalizing main streets. About 5% of revenues in 23 is allocated to multimodal mobility services. That includes our CDOT delivered transit and mobility programs. Bustang is probably the most notable of these programs. Also includes some of our 10-year plan transit projects, our innovative mobility programs, electrification programs. So those programs collectively represent about 5% of revenues in fiscal year 27. About 7% goes to administration and operations. So that's sort of the general operations of the department. That includes a lot of salaries and benefits. That includes IT costs, light fleet costs, common policy. Those are things we pay to the state for central services like IT and attorney general services. And then about 8% goes to a variety of other programs, but most notably, the largest portion of that goes to our debt service and our contingency and reserve funding. So at a high level, that is how the $2.3 billion in the fiscal year 27 budget is allocated programmatically. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the overall CDOT budget is available on the website. It's about a 100+ page document, includes a number of key components. The two most notable components that you see most frequently in front of the Commission and STAC are the revenue allocation plan and the spending plan. The revenue allocation plan is really looking at the new revenue in the current fiscal year, or the upcoming fiscal year, I should say. So in those are the revenues we just talked through in the last slide. That's how are we allocating the $2.3 billion in new revenues forecasted for the upcoming fiscal year? The spending plan is what we actually expect to spend in the fiscal year, using both those new revenues as well as our existing fund balances. So a number of other elements of the budget, but really the revenue allocation plan and the spending plan are really kind of the core pieces of the budget. And we spend most of our time focused on the revenue allocation plan. That's really sort of the element that directs ultimately the spending. Let's go to the next slide. We'll move ahead one slide. There we go. All right, so this is the revenue allocation plan. Again, I think this is the part of the budget that STAC and the Commission are probably most familiar with. This again shows how we are allocating dollars as they come in the door. So this document shows how we're allocating those $2.3 billion in revenues in fiscal year 27. I won't get into detail about all of the individual programs in terms of how they're allocated, but really our budget is made up of inflexible revenues and flexible revenues. Inflexible revenues are those that are very narrowly statutorily prescribed in terms of how they're supposed to be used. Examples of that would be federal programs like CMAQ or HSIP, enterprise revenues, the Multimodal Options Fund, right? These programs have very explicit statutory direction. There's really not a decision point necessarily for CDOT or the Commission to make in terms of how to use those dollars, at least at a programmatic level. So inflexible revenues, really, we just reflect in the budget how much revenue we forecast for that particular program for the year. Flexible revenues are those revenues where we do have discretion over, should we allocate it to pavement? Should we allocate it to bridges? Should we allocate it to bike ped, et cetera? And so for flexible revenues, that's really the where we spend the bulk of our time working through the budget cycle to determine how those dollars are allocated. In general, we start the budget cycle by allocating to those programs at the levels from the prior fiscal year. We then make adjustments to those based on total revenue available, as well as changes in costs, inflationary increases in some cases, cost of living increases for salaries and benefits, as well as decision items, which are requests from programs to consider notable increases. So at a high level, again, the revenues are set in the revenue allocation plan, either based on a revenue forecast if it's inflexible, or for flexible revenues, we start with prior year levels and then make adjustments from there. The overall revenue allocation plan, again, back to sort of what we talked about in the prior slides, about $1.7 billion flowing to CDOT and allocated to CDOT programs, and a little over $600 million allocated to the enterprises. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Again, the revenue allocation plan is looking at the new revenues forecasted for the upcoming fiscal year. The spending plan is looking at what do we actually expect to spend in the upcoming fiscal year based on new revenues coming in the door, as well as our existing fund balances. And for fiscal year 27, we are forecasting about $2.9 billion in expenditures, with about $2.3 billion of those being expenditures on the CDOT side, and about $600 million expenditures through the enterprises. You'll note 2.9 billion is more than 2.3 billion that was on the prior slides related to the revenue allocation plan. What that reflects is it reflects us continuing to draw down one-time funding we've received over the last 5 years or so as a result of Senate Bill 267, stimulus funding, et cetera. So we have remaining fund balances from those one-time funds that are being spent down, and so we're seeing expenditures in fiscal year 27 again of about $600 million above the new revenues coming in the door in fiscal year 27. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we presented to you. I can't remember now. I think a couple of months ago. Really, since that time, there have not been a lot of significant changes to the draft budget. A couple of just changes outlined here. Final balancing changes. We had to make an increase to our agency operations budget and our administration budget to match common policies. Those are decisions by the Joint Budget Committee about how much CDOT is assessed for various centrally provided services like IT, OIT, or Attorney General costs. So a couple of small increases to agency operations and administration to reflect those common policy changes. To balance that required us to make a corresponding reduction to 10-year plan projects. So a small downward adjustment to the dollars allocated to the 10-year plan portion of the budget. But those are really the key changes from the last time that STAC saw the budget. Let's go to the next slide, please. Looking at the 10-year plan, we're going to be approving the next 4-year window of the 10-year plan, and sometime very soon. We continue to fund through annual allocations of dollars in the budget, both the existing 4-year window of 10-year plan projects, plus we're going to start seeing new projects through that updated 10-year plan come online. Again, we're allocating dollars as dollars become available in each annual budget to try to keep projects moving through that 10-year plan pipeline. In fiscal year 27, we have allocated about $142.7 million to the 10-year plan. The planning target we've set is higher than that. It's about $225 million, $200 to $225 million a year. You'll note that we are not hitting that target right now, and the primary reason for that is the reductions we've seen in fiscal year 27 related to general fund. So that reduction of by about half to the general fund transfer to CDOT essentially represents about a $50 million cut to the amount of funds we're able to allocate to the 10-year plan in fiscal year 27. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so going to talk just a little bit about roll forwards. Before we finalize the budget, we incorporate an estimate of the funds we expect to roll forward from the current fiscal year to the new fiscal year on June 30. Just to kind of explain a little bit what roll forwards are. In the case of operating funds, those amounts represent unexpended balances that we planned to spend by June 30, but for one reason or another aren't fully spent by June 30. A little bit different in the case of capital or grant funds, because capital projects and grants spend over multiple fiscal years. In that case, the roll forward budget is basically unencumbered balances. So those are dollars that have not yet been put into a grant agreement or a construction contract. Doesn't mean they're not programmed. It just means they haven't yet gotten to the point of being contracted. We have had large roll forward balances for the last several years as a result of the large amount of one-time funds we received through state and federal stimulus and through Senate Bill 267 COPs. We have, however, been steadily drawing those balances down. We're currently estimating roll forwards across CDOT and the enterprises to total about $1.97 billion in fiscal year 27. That's down about 16% from the amount of roll forwards last year. So again, the roll forward balances continue to go down as we move forward. Projects, largely 10-year plan projects, funded with a lot of those one-time funding. The largest portion of that roll forward balance, about $1.6 billion, is with CDOT. The rest is with the enterprises. The CDOT portion of the roll forward balance is down about 22% from last year. More than half of that roll forward balance is capital construction funds, and again, most significantly, funds associated with the 10-year plan. A little more than a quarter of the roll forward balance is sub-allocated programs or local programs. I'll note that local programs are the one area of our budget where we generally do maintain large roll forward balances, and that's just due to the time lag associated with local project selection and contracting processes. And then other major sources of roll forward for CDOT include balances that have been set aside for debt service to pay debt service over a period of years, as well as contingency funds. And then I'm not going to go through the detail here, but you will see roll forward balances associated with each of the enterprises, as well as the primary drivers of those balances. Let's go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about roll forward balances, one thing I want to point out, it's critical that we recognize that just because we're rolling funds forward from one fiscal year to the next does not mean that the funds are unplanned or otherwise available to be used for other purposes. The majority of all roll forward funds are programmed to projects or grants. They just haven't proceeded to the point where they are budgeted into a project and put into a contract or grant agreement. So at this point in the budget cycle, these are just estimates. We'll update these balances in the fall with actual roll forward amounts once the current fiscal year is closed. All right, let's go to the next slide. And I think I'm going to kind of wrap up here, and then I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them. Again, just kind of wrapping up where we're at in the budget cycle. The budget cycle it extends about 6 months. We really start this process in September of each year, so we're approaching the end. We will be bringing the budget to the commission and asking them to review this final version of the budget and adopt the budget at their meeting in a few weeks here. We then have to submit that budget to the governor's office and the legislature in April. And then we expect that the governor will approve and sign the budget before the end of June, so that it is approved and available for us to start utilizing on July 1. So I think that's the last slide I have here on the budget. I'll also note one other closing remark, I guess. As you're well aware, and I think you've heard from Emily, legislative session is underway. We have to adopt the budget really in the middle of the legislative session. So what that usually means is that we typically see changes that will impact our budget continue to occur through the end of the session. As such, as soon as we get to the start of the fiscal year in July, we almost immediately inevitably come back to the commission with budget amendments. So any changes we see from this point out in the legislative cycle, we'll be tracking closely, and then we will be back likely in July to amend this budget to sync up with any final changes coming out of the legislative session. So, all right. Well, Chair, I will wrap there. And again, I'm happy to take any questions, and also be interested if STAC is interested in a motion to recommend approval of the budget.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, this is an action item, so we need to either recommend adoption or not to the commission. So we need a motion for that. But are there any questions or comments for Jeff at this point? Okay. Not seeing any. It's a lot of information. Sure. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to recommend approval to the commission.
Holly Williams, so moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we recommend adoption to the commission. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none. Anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion will stand approved. All right. Up next is our statewide transportation improvement update, demonstration of their new program. So I believe Jamie will be taking this one over.
Yes, I will. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
As you all know, we changed our software. We were SAP decided to stop supporting our PBF module that we were working with the STIP in SAP. So we went ahead and sought out a SIP software that we could use that would maybe be a little more public friendly and give everybody a little different feel for the STIP. So in November, late November, we went live with Project Tracker. And I should note that Pikes Peak COG also uses Project Tracker for their tip. But we went live in late November and then immediately got bogged down with fixing glitches. Those glitches have all been fixed right now. We are now at a point where we're doing remaining tickets that are left from the initial go live, et cetera. And so we're tweaking a few things. And then once we get all those tickets taken care of, then we can start thinking about enhancements and stuff that we might want to also add or change to the software itself. But anyway, Aaron, if you can go to the next slide. You will find on this slide, there is a link to the website. You can also reach the website if you go to the CDOT STIP page on the external website that CDOT has. But here's the link for it. And you will land on this welcome page. And this welcome page, you will see it's got a summary of information at the bottom, but up on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see welcome, projects, plan revisions, interactive map, and visualization. Those are tabs that will take you in to look at various pieces and parts of the STIP. Next slide, please. So one of the first things that you want to click on if you're looking for specific projects is that projects tab. And you can see it again on this screen. Those tabs always stay on the upper right. But when you click on the projects tab, this is where you can go look for STIP projects. This is the default screen. You'll see there's various fields here, excuse me, that you can put information in. My recommendation is over on the right, you'll see an option for advanced search. Go ahead and hit the next screen, please. And what this option gives you is the ability to actually enter a STIP ID. It's the third line down. Go back up. It goes there. You can enter the STIP ID here. You can enter project types, which I'll get into a little bit later, but we've added some categories for all the different projects that CDOT works on with our construction program. You can search by region, you can search by TPR. One thing I do recommend up here on the top line, it says there's a box on the 3 boxes. The one on the right says year programmed. Make sure you're looking for the current STIP cycle, unless you are deliberately looking for some older information. But you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at the current STIP and not old stuff. But anyway, once this comes up, you have a whole list of projects. You can, like I said, you can search for a STIP ID. You can click on any of the projects that come in. It just defaults to a whole list for you, etc. Next slide. So once you, sorry, go back one. I'm sorry, Aaron. So you can go on and you can click on any of these and it'll bring up like a summary screen of what the project will look like, etc. The next tab over is called Plan Revisions. Now we can go to the next slide, sorry. Plan revisions every week when we're doing all of our administrative modifications and so forth. And even when we do a STIP amendment, we have to set up what is called a plan revision. This page here will show you all of the revisions that we've been working on since we went live in November. And basically we here at CDOT in the planning group, we are doing revisions based on a weekly cycle. So we open up a plan revision. The planners can go in there and submit their amendments, etc. during that week. And then Riley, Adamy, and I will go in and approve them. And then it will all go live and end up on the website once we approve that plan revision. Next slide, please. So for this example, I am showing you the plan revision that we did February 9th through 13th. These are all of the projects that we went through during that plan revision. And if you click on any of these projects, you can pull up what was changed on that project. So if you go to the next slide, for instance, on this one, it's the Region 2 surface treatment project for preventative maintenance. And this is the summary screen that you will get. And this is basically the same summary screen that you will get on any of these. When you click on a project, it'll bring this up. And it'll give you all the funding total for all of the fiscal years, etc. And if the project has been mapped, you get a lovely little map. We have not had maps with the STIP for a long time because the link in PBF broke and we were unable to have maps for a really long time. So I'm kind of excited we have maps again. Anyway, next slide. The next tab over is the interactive map. And what this will give you is a list of all the projects that have been mapped. Not all of our projects are mapped. If they are like for studies or they're non-location specific, and particularly in transit for transit routes, we don't map the transit routes for local projects, for local transit agencies, etc. So there's a lot of stuff that is not mapped, but for all the projects that are mapped, they will populate here. And you can find details for these projects. You can see on this screen, you've got project types kind of up at the top left, and below that, you've got a list of projects that are mapped. And then on the right, of course, is the map. So you can click on any project in the list on the left, or you can click on a segment on the right. And if you click on the segment, go to the next slide, please. If you click on a segment, you'll get a little pop-up box that tells you what the project is, what the funding is, and what years the funding is assigned to. And then the next slide is if you go ahead and if you were to click on that list that was on the left side of the screen, it'll take you back to this summary screen that I showed you a minute ago. So that's that for mapping. Go ahead to the next slide, please. This is one of my favorite things on Project Tracker right now. With updating the 10-year plan and having a whole new set of projects in the 10-year plan, we realize that there's some confusion out there with whether people realize that the 10-year plan is our construction program or if we have other stuff. We obviously have a lot more to our construction program than just the 10-year plan. So we started assigning project type categories to all of the projects that CDOT is working on. And currently it is this list here, and it is 10-year plan, active transportation, asset management, enterprises, environmental, safety, transit, and other. But this tab here illustrates everything kind of in sum total for how those projects are allocated and laid out. So if you go in here, you can see it gives us a lovely pie chart, and you can have the sum totals here. And this is for the whole 4 years. This is not just FY26. This is for the entire STIP cycle. So, but if you look at this page and you want to get into the detail for what projects are included, like in active transportation, you can click on active transportation and it will bring you up a list of all of the active transportation projects in the STIP. Go to the next slide, please. So on this particular one, and this one, asset management. So this is all of the asset management projects for CDOT. And you can see here, it's 178 projects. So you can scroll down through here and look for, any project you want. And again, if you click on any of these, you'll get that summary screen once again. And that's kind of it. I know this was quick and dirty. I was told to keep this at a very, very high level. But if anybody has any questions, and I think Michael had one in the chat that I did not read very well. Yes, this should be the correct link. And if it's not, it should be. See, yeah, that's the correct link. Does anybody else have any questions? Michael, you had a question and I didn't see it very well. Do you want to verbalize it for me?
Yeah, it's a little bit, but I just missed my opportunity. I was just wondering how you were sharing the map, and I was wondering how projects appear that don't have a physical location, or if
They don't. They don't appear on that map.
Okay.
If they are not mapped, they are not there.
Got it. Okay.
I know we've gone through some exercises with the region planners to try and make sure that we've got all of the location-specific projects mapped. I have a feeling we need to go through and do that exercise again. I know we just did it in October, but if you look at that screen in your handout, there's only like 260 projects right now that say they're mapped. Right now, we have like close to 900 projects in the STIP. Now, they're not all in current fiscal year 26. This is for the whole 4 years. But I seem to think that we have more than 260 projects that are mapped. So I am working with the consultant to make sure that we have all the current data that is mapped, that it is showing on that screen. And I may be reaching back out to the region planners to go through another exercise and see if there's more projects that we can actually get mapped in SAP. Project Tracker is pulling data out of SAP to populate the website, as well as the information that we amend the funding on in Project Tracker. So there is still communication back and forth with SAP. SAP is.
So I've had this question for 2 days, but now I see it's back in. Ahead of full resolution of the needed maintenance siting, we don't.
Guess that wasn't meant for me. Now I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, the communication is still going back and forth between Project Tracker and SAP. So once I resolve the mapping issue, hopefully we'll have a few more projects that show up on that mapping tab. Does anybody have any other questions for me?
Any other questions or input for the STIP?
And I should just reiterate, and this is just kind of off, well, not off topic. We are heading into development cycle for the 27 to 30 STIP. So I will be releasing a draft at the end of March. And then we will go do a public hearing with the commission in April. And then the commission will adopt the new STIP in May. And then FHWA and FTA will have the month of June to do a final review of everything and hopefully give us their approval so we can go live with the 27 to 30 STIP on July 1.
Thank you for the information. It looks like a very useful tool. So
yeah, thank
dig
you.
into that. Okay. There's no other questions for that. We'll move on to the Mustang overview with Kay Kelly.
Hey, good morning. So I will be starting off the presentation and then Jeff is going to pop in a little later as well, but did want to say thank you for the invitation to join you today. We're going to walk through the slides we presented to a joint workshop of the Transportation Commission and the CTIO board in February, a conversation that will very much be continued into our March workshops as well. But we'll start off with a little refresher on Mustang, talk about our recent service growth, get into the financial needs to continue to provide this level of service to our traveling public, and then some options that we've been considering in order to allow the service to continue at the current levels. So we can dive right in. Next slide. There you go. So Mustang turned 10 years old last summer. We started out as a very modest transit service. We were focused primarily on commuters on the interstates. In 2018, we added the first of our rural outrider routes that were connecting rural areas into urban centers. Seasonal services to our ski areas in the winter months and to Estes Park in the warmer months was launched in 2019. We had a rather large infusion of funding in 2023 after the passage of SB 180, along with some federal ARPA dollars as well. That allowed us to really launch our Pegasus service in the Mountain Express lanes and significantly expand service on those original main lines that we started in 2015. So you can go to the next slide. Before we go much further, we do like to point out the differences, the different characteristics between our Mustang and Outrider services. Mustang is very much focused on high frequency service on our interstates. It supports commuters, recreational travelers, and any travel between major cities across the state. These routes are currently running on 1 hour or even 45-minute headways, depending on the time of the day. And that frequency we've seen is really key to getting people to choose that option for their travel needs. If the bus only comes, once or twice a day, it is a little harder to plan around. And if your schedule goes awry, it's a little harder to adjust. So Mustang is really that spine on the highways with really high frequency. Outrider is our rural service. Most of these routes are only operating 1 round trip a day, with the exception of Crested Butte to Denver, which is now 2 routes a day because we had a lot of demand on that route. This service really exists to connect our rural residents into critical services that they may only be able to access in the bigger cities. It's supported by FTA 5311F funding, but it really is a lower frequency service, getting folks from rural communities into the cities. On the next slide, this is our system map. So the year-round services are in the large map and the seasonal services are in the inset map. And you can see that we're serving a really broad swath of the state with our Mustang family of transit service. We're also connecting into local transit at nearly all of these dots on the map, and in some cases into our really state-of-the-art mobility hubs, especially along the North Line. And if you go to the next slide, so the map is good at showing kind of that geographic coverage. It's not good at showing the service frequency. So this chart is showing how our service has grown in recent years. And we've implemented this increased service at the direction of the state legislature through SB 22180. Before 2023, we were providing 6 daily round trips on weekends, only 2 on the weekends, both on I-25 North and South. We were doing 4 daily round trips on the West Line, and only 2 of those actually spanned the full route from Denver to Grand Junction. Once the full expansion was phased in, that happened in December of 2024, we had doubled service on the North and South line and more than tripled service on the West line. So you can see how the increased frequency really allows more people to use the bus because it's just coming much more frequently and could fit in with more travelers' schedules. On the next slide, we're looking at ridership. So we, like all transit agencies, saw a significant decline in ridership during the pandemic. During that time, we had capacity restrictions on our buses, and people just generally weren't traveling in normal travel patterns. But since the end of the pandemic, we've experienced a really rapid climb in ridership. We are now far surpassing our pre-pandemic ridership. We've seen double-digit year-over-year growth since 2021. So really a nice success story for us. Not all transit agencies are in this cadence. Not all of them have even recovered their pre-pandemic ridership, and we are far surpassing it. If you move on to the next slide, I'm just highlighting a few additional success stories from the last few years. So our additional service frequency on the main lines was enabled by 25 new coach buses that we put into service. That was a key component of being able to deliver expanded service, was merely having the vehicles to do that. We've also been strategically tying our transit service into thoughtful infrastructure improvements, including our mobility hubs. I-25 and I-70 have some really great infrastructure that's allowing transit priority. We have one of our outrider routes now serving Denver International Airport. We're considering how we might have additional routes serve the airport in the future because that has been really successful. I did mention our Crested Butte to Denver route. We've had to add a second trip on that because we were regularly seeing completely full buses and having to turn away potential passengers because we didn't have enough seats for them. So we now have a second daily round trip that's also filling up, which is great. Snowstang is doing well. It has a net operating cost that is positive thanks to partner resort cost share on that. So that's a really wonderful service to help get folks to our ski resorts in the winter. It helps keep some folks off of the roads who maybe don't have vehicles that are well equipped for driving the mountain conditions, or maybe they aren't confident driving the mountain conditions. We have a professional driver, and those buses run like clockwork to the ski resorts and get people where they want to be. Overall, we did see 21% year-over-year growth in ridership in fiscal year 25. That was another record year, and we continue to also have fare box recovery that's exceeding the national average, which is an important metric for transit. If you go to the next slide, the service expansion that was enabled by the SB 180 and federal ARPA dollars has been a really huge success. It's demonstrated that there is a demand for this travel option. We've provided the service and people are responding well to it. But once those funds have been expended, we will have a funding gap. So from here, we really want to start defining the challenge at hand for enabling Bustang to keep providing this level of service to our traveling public. And that's really what the balance of the presentation is focused on, some of the options that we've been considering to be able to continue this service. So on the next slide, this is a look at revenue and expenses. And I think what you see on this chart, really Bustang was this great little transit service for its first 8 years. Its revenues were really well aligned with its expenses. But what the chart doesn't show is that it wasn't really the transit service that Colorado needed. We were leaving people behind. People were demanding more service. People weren't able to travel where they wanted to go using transit as an option. So we did know, that there was untapped potential for Bustang. We knew that it could really help us deliver on providing additional travel options on some of our most crowded corridors. It could help with reducing congestion. It could deliver on a lot of the goals that have been outlined for the administration in our greenhouse gas roadmap, in our transportation vision, in our CDOT wildly important goals. So in 2023, that huge influx of funding enabled us to move from this really limited service that, again, was really nice, but allowed us to move into something that better met the needs of Colorado travelers, and that could make mode shift into transit a real possibility for a larger percentage of people in Colorado. So we had $35 million in ARPA funds. We had $30 million in SB 180 funds. And those were all put towards scaling us up from that little service of the past to the expanded service levels that we reached in the middle of fiscal year 25. And so the question is, we've provided this level of service. The public is enjoying it. In fact, they're demanding more of it. How do we account for those increased costs and the increased service from here on out once those one-time funds are expended? So on the next slide, we have two scenarios here for consideration. One scenario where we just maintain the service that we have, that's the red dotted line, and a second scenario where we account for an additional service growth of about 5% per year. That's the green line. The Transportation Commission asked us specifically to say, what if we don't just maintain what we have? What if we need to account for future expansion? So that green line is what that reflects. We haven't exactly defined where those specific routes might be or what the frequency changes might be, but it's just kind of an overall 5% assumption. And under both of those scenarios, there are two main cost drivers. First, there is our annual operating contract to provide the service. This is a 5-year contract. It has a 4% cost escalation each year. And second, the second component of cost is really the maintenance of our bus assets, which is really important. Our buses are driving hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles a day, and they're carrying passengers. So the buses need to be in tip-top condition, and we need to have a regular replacement cycle so that we're keeping those buses operating in tip-top condition. So if we want to just maintain the service that we're providing today, the gap between the funds we have available and what we need in order to provide the service is pretty substantial. Our operating budget needs to be about $47 million per year starting in fiscal year 27. If we did want to look at the growth scenario where we're expanding service beyond what we've already provided, our operating budget would need to be about $50 million per year starting in fiscal year 27. And so from here, we're going to dig a little more into the financials and discuss some of those options. And this is where I'm going to hand things off to our CFO, Jeff.
Thanks, Kay. So we can go on to the next slide. And so in the next few slides, I'll provide an overview of current Bustang revenues, Bustang and Outrider revenue and expenses, and begin a discussion of the funding shortfall the program is facing if we are to continue to offer current expanded pilot levels of service. So current ongoing Bustang revenues total approximately $23 million annually. This includes the state share of the Multimodal Transportation and Mitigations Options Fund, or MMOF, totaling about $3 to $3.5 million annually. About $6 million annually is planned for capital purposes in the update to the 10-year plan, which the TC will be asked to approve in the coming months. About $6 million of the state allocation of faster transit funding is currently and has been for the past several years allocated to Bustang, as well as about $3 million in FTA 5311F funding, which goes to the Bustang Outrider service. And then finally, farebox revenues are currently about $4.5 million annually. So while our ongoing revenue sources total roughly $23 million annually, as Kay indicated, the cost of current expanded pilot levels of service is much higher and will approach, I think, around $50 million annually this upcoming fiscal year. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So again, this is looking at our expenses by corridor, beginning in this upcoming fiscal year 27, and looking out to fiscal year 30. These costs align with the green line a few slides ago and factor in both the 4% annual cost escalation Kay referenced, as well as the 5% annual growth in service. So if you exclude that 5% annual growth in services, expenses will grow a little more slowly, roughly, sorry, I'm lost my spot here. So if we look at that other scenario without the growth, the expenses grow a little bit more slowly, but we're still looking at a funding gap. So if you're looking at this right here again, assuming that 5% annual service growth, we're at about a $51 million program in fiscal year 27. That results in about a $28 million deficit beginning next fiscal year and growing to over 40 million over the next 4 years. If you exclude that 5% growth, you're looking at a slightly smaller deficit, roughly 25 million beginning next fiscal year, growing to over 35 million. But either way, the message is clear. We have some pretty significant needs for additional funding if we are to continue to offer the current expanded levels of service. So in the next few slides, we'll start to walk through some of the potential solutions we're exploring. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'm going to start with some short-term solutions. Obviously, fiscal year 27 is fast upon us, so we've been very focused on trying to narrow or eliminate the funding gap next year to buy us a little more time to identify and implement longer-term funding strategies before we reach the fiscal cliff, so to speak. So to that end, we are proposing a one-time reallocation of roll-forward funding from the Innovative Mobility and CMAQ programs, which would provide a one-time infusion of about 19.1 million in fiscal year 27. This includes about 11.9 million of prior year roll forward from the Innovative Mobility program and about 7.2 million in prior year roll forward from the CMAQ statewide allocation. In the case of the Innovative Mobility program, the program was new a handful of years ago, and it's been a little bit slow as a result to get some of the dollars out the door as new programs have been developed and stood up. I'll also note that OIM has been planning ahead, recognizing the impending BestStank funding cliff. They have waited to make any other decisions to redeploy those funds so that they would be available to reallocate to BestStank if needed. And I think at this point where we are heading into fiscal year 27, I would say they are needed. Again, if we are to continue to maintain current levels of service. In the case of the CMAQ program, the statewide allocation of CMAQ, which is about 2 million annually, was established several years ago, and it was dedicated to EV infrastructure. However, since that time, several new funding sources have been put in place focused on electrification, which consequently reduced the need for these funds, and it resulted in the roll forward balance that we are now proposing to be reallocated. We're also looking at potentially reallocating that statewide allocation, again, 2 million annually on an ongoing basis going into the future. Both of these actions would require TC approval. So we're this discussion here, both short-term solutions as well as long-term solutions, is an ongoing discussion. We will be back in front of the TC again this month, and anticipate that with respect to at least the short-term solutions, we'll probably be back soon to formally propose some of these reallocations to the commission. So even with those reallocations of funds, we're still looking at about a $7 million funding gap in fiscal year 27. But I'll say this probably gets us within striking distance next year. If necessary, if we're not able to, if we're not successful in this upcoming year with some of the long-term solutions we'll talk about in a bit, closing that remaining funding gap, I think we can look at some other options, including deferring some capital costs that could probably get us through fiscal year 27. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So ultimately, though, the strategies we just discussed are really just short-term stopgaps. It's really just looking the next year ahead and saying, what can we do on a one-time basis to buy us another year or so as we continue to work on the long-term solution. But that's really what the focus is the long-term solution. We really are focused on finding a sustainable ongoing funding source so that we can continue to offer the very successful expanded pilot levels of service and potentially to grow from there. So So again, despite the short-term funding strategies I just outlined, we will still have an ongoing funding gap averaging about 37 million annually from fiscal year 27, or I'm sorry, from fiscal year 28 to fiscal year 30, under a 5% growth scenario. Under the other scenario where we do not assume growth, it's a little bit smaller. It's about $29 to $30 million funding gap, beginning again about a year from now, because as I noted, we've largely solved for the funding gap for next year. And then again, that funding gap will increase over time with inflation, escalating operating costs, et cetera. So unfortunately, beyond the one-time strategies we've just discussed, we have very limited options to provide additional ongoing funding to Bustang through CDOT. Existing CDOT revenue sources with transit eligibility are very limited. And in general, I would say they are inadequate to fully fund the remaining funding gap without significant reductions in service. So to that end, we've been looking at some other strategies. One of those key strategies has been focusing on the potential for a funding partnership with one of the enterprises, specifically the CTIO, the Colorado Transportation Investment Office. And so some of the funding strategies we've been looking at with respect to a partnership with CTIO include potentially leveraging some surplus toll revenue on the managed lane corridors, I-25 and I-70, as well as looking at potentially some Senate Bill 24-184 congestion impact fee revenue. Although I will note that congestion impact fee revenue is also one of the primary sources of funding for our rail projects. So a lot of demands for those limited funds. So let's go into the next slide here, and then I think I'll wrap up. So when we presented to Commission a couple of weeks ago, Piper Darlington with the CTIO spoke a little bit more specifically to what this could mean for CTIO. We had a joint meeting of the Transportation Commission and the CTIO, and so Piper's not here today, but I'll try to fill in for her just a little bit. One thing that I think is important to note as we talk about the potential for a partnership with CTIO is that CTIO is not new to transit. It has used tolls to fund transit infrastructure in the past. The best example of that is probably the I-25 North mobility hubs, which were funded by CTIO. It also prioritizes transit trip reliability through its operational policies. So the express lanes themselves and the operations of those express lanes are also tied to trying to provide reliability for transit trips. So there is definitely a transit elements to the CTIO scope. We definitely think that CTIO could fund additional capital construction projects for transit with an access to its tolling corridors. I think we're looking at more broadly what its participation in operating would look like. I will note that one of the limitations with respect to the CTIO funding partnership is that there's a current corridor restriction which limits the extent to which toll revenue can be leveraged outside the corridor. So that is something that needs to be considered. The corridor restriction basically says, corridor revenues here have to stay within this corridor, revenues here have to stay within that corridor. And so that's something that we're looking at as we consider what a funding partnership with CTIO might look like. I had mentioned also, in addition to the toll revenue, one of the other potentials for funding through CTIO is Senate Bill 24-184. I think there's some additional legal analysis really with respect to that, but more broadly, everything we're talking about here. So we're continuing to look at that further. And then also, as I noted, one of the other key variables with respect to Senate Bill 184 funding is the need for those dollars as well for rail projects. So while potentially a part of the solution to Bustang, I think it's also important to note that those dollars are also very much counted on to support our rail projects. So I think there's maybe one more slide, and then we can kind of wrap up here. And then I think Kay and I'd be happy to try to take questions. So again, this was what Kay and I presented to you today is really the same presentation we shared with the Transportation Commission and the CTIO board last month. We do expect several subsequent discussions with both of those boards and with transportation stakeholders on the months ahead. We will have a follow-up workshop again in March. I also mentioned that the pieces that I think are probably getting a little bit more locked in are some of the short-term strategies that will buy us a little bit more time. So I think you'll also see us bringing some of those short-term strategies forward as a formal proposal, probably not in March, but potentially in April. And then I'll also note we're very much engaged with the Attorney General's office on legal questions and paths forward. There's a number of considerations, ideas here, strategies here that need some further input about how best to implement, and so we will be continuing to work on that in the months ahead as we also engage with the Transportation Commission and the CTIO board. So, Kay, I'll hand it back to you if you had any other kind of closing remarks, and then I think we can probably take any questions.
Nothing else here, so yeah, happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions, comments, input? Kristen?
Okay, sorry, I had a second to take me off of so I guess I think we all see the value of busting. It's a great service. Are there any sort of attempts to, I mean, do we feel like we need all the frequency that we have? I mean, I do understand putting up a robust service, but are there any attempts at sort of efficiencies or kind of cutting some routes that aren't as well used or something like that to try to create some efficiencies in the system before kind of looking for more dollars?
Yep, that's a great question. And I think we are going to be providing another presentation to the Transportation Commission. And I think one of the elements of that will be like, what ways can we optimize the service that we have right now? Which trips are doing well, which trips are not doing as well? How can we shift things around? But I think there is a pretty big jump from where we started to where we are now. So even with some optimizations, I think we're still looking at a little bit of a deficit to optimize service as well.
Yeah, I imagine that's so. And then just with the box fares, like we've heard on North I-25 that it's a very popular, and that 30% of the operations are covered by the fares. So I think that's maybe less so in other cases. And are there ways to kind of, I'm not saying we might still have a deficit. I'm just saying that to make up some of that deficit, are there ways that we either increase fares or there again look at efficiencies around, why are some routes covering their more of their operating costs and why others aren't?
Yeah, and that's also a good question and something we're going to dig into a little more with the commission and the CTIO board in March. But our costs for operating the service are on a per mile basis. So, and our fares are also tied to the distance that you travel. So, if you're traveling a route that's 100 miles, you're going to pay less than if you're traveling on a route that's 300 miles. So, so we do try to match the the fare with the distance that you're traveling, because that's our cost driver, is the distance. So, the West Line tickets are much more expensive if you're traveling all the way from Denver to Grand Junction than if you're going Denver to Fort Collins, just because of the distance. So yes, we're always looking at, we have a service planning team that's always looking at kind of optimizing that. Although it is, I think, unrealistic to expect that that the bus ticket itself would cover the entire cost of that operation. So, but good questions.
Thank you.
Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Kay and Jeff. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really helpful. Jeff, I think these questions are for you. I have a micro question and a macro question. The micro question, the CMAQ funding, I think this is the case, and I just want to hear you say it out loud, but I think I understand that the CMAQ funding, the $2 million, I think you said, is from CDOT's statewide allocation, would not affect the allocations to, for example, DRCOG and North Front Range, given the importance of those CMAQ dollars to us. I just want to make sure there isn't an implication there. So let me pause for a second, then I'll ask the macro question.
Yep. Yeah, no, that is correct. The portion we're talking about is the portion that has been set aside and has been in place. I think there's been a statewide set aside in place for quite a while. It's changed over time a little bit in terms of how much and for what purpose, but it's just the statewide allocation that I believe back in 2020 or 2021, the current version of that was put in place, and it was dedicated to EV infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Macro question is, I think I heard you use the phrase, and I don't want to misquote you, so please correct me, excess toll revenues on the tolled freeway corridors. If I'm correct in that, can you talk about what the word excess means in this context? And what I'm really getting at is what makes those funds excess? And if I did misunderstand you, and I apologize if I misquoted you, I guess really the question is trade-offs, right? These toll revenues that are being collected that are supposed to be spent in the corridor. If more of them are dedicated to bus staying, that's less dedicated to something else. What are those trade-offs that we're looking at in that strategy?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I may have used the term excess, but I think what I'm really talking about is sort of the toll revenues that are available after paying for debt service, operations and maintenance on the corridor, and really are available for other legal purposes, which could include we think contributions to Bustang, but otherwise could include other infrastructure improvements. And so I think I think the CTIO board, I think, is going to be in an upcoming meeting talking more about some of those other infrastructure improvements and kind of what are the costs associated with that on those corridors. And I think trying to look at sort of those revenues that are available after meeting current debt service, operations, and maintenance. What are the options for them? And again, I think the options for them can include a number of different things related to improvements on the corridor or potentially transit service on the corridor, Bustang being one of them.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that clarification.
Okay. Any other? Emily?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rieger, for those questions. I had some similar thoughts. In the I-25 North region, we are, advocating for safety improvements, particularly along segments 2, 3, and 4, and similar to what they've seen in segments 5 and 6 recently, where crash data has come down significantly, like 30 to 40%. We are advocating for those funding for CTIO funds to sort of invest in those safety improvements in our area. And so I'm at tables and I hear concerns about reallocating toll funding when the idea of excess funds was kind of funny to me, because I on the other side advocating for just extended toll lanes and trying to improve safety along the corridor. That said, Erie in particular, we are so excited about the Highway 7 interim mobility hub that is soon to open and is under construction. And we're thrilled to have the Bustang and access to transit there. We know that it's a both and conversation, that all of these improvements are important. but those are some concerns for the north area, that reallocating toll revenue away from other improvements. We would like to see a both and approach and try to ensure that we can serve all of those strategies moving forward. So anyway, that's just some thoughts I had. Thank you.
Okay. Eva?
Thanks. So you did mention a partnership possibly with CTIO. Were there any conversations around maybe a public-private partnership to adjust some of those shortfalls?
So it's a good question, and I think I would say at this point in time, we are looking at we are open to a variety of options. I think that the current focus has been on looking at a partnership with CTIO. CTIO has a number of tools at its disposal. Public-private partnerships are one of those tools. I think among the existing revenue sources flowing through CTIO, the two that have the clearest nexus are the toll revenues and Senate Bill 184. But again, I don't think that necessarily precludes other options. So I think what I would probably say at this point in time is that until we have locked into a long-term solution, I think we remain interested in any number of opportunities.
Yeah, just from the years of working with all the planning throughout the state, I have concerns about taking toll revenue away from the maintenance operations and improvements to the toll corridors and things, those expansions and keeping the efficiency so that the bus service can actually run efficiently so that you have that time savings and competitive advantage, hopefully, to get people to ride the bus. So I have concerns about not having the funding for that future maintenance and operation that also has not been fully accounted for those transit centers. And I think they're covering the cost of the toll lane infrastructure to keep that system working. But those transit centers that have just opened and the new ones that are planned, those take maintenance dollars and costs that have not been fully accounted for in the future years also. So there are future expenses that I think the toll revenue needs to be covering that has not been fully accounted for on some of those items also. So just things to consider. Vern.
Thanks, Gary. I guess from a layman's perspective, it feels pretty bold to have a proposed 5% possible increase in services when the funding gap is what it is. I would say that would be the first thing I would not consider moving towards when you only have half of the funding available.
Yeah, and I'll clarify that was a request from the Transportation Commission for us to look at a scenario both to maintain and to expand. So.
Okay, Dana.
Yeah, I think just thinking about how like MOF funds are being pulled from local governments to fund busting, making sure that we are right sizing it and that the buses are relatively full. I get it's transit. We all have local transit systems and trying to build that service, but also right sizing vehicle size, making sure that, like Grand Junction to, I think, the mountains, are generally not as full as the mountains going into Denver. So thinking about maybe looking at smaller vehicles for those portions, like the Pegasus vans, is something I think that should be looked at. Another thing I think about is just that, especially the West Lane, which looking at your chart seemed to be a big portion of that cost, trying to partner maybe with ski industries, since a lot of that is what's driving the congestion on I-70. And I always think like it would be great if there was a fee on passes or parking or something that's helping to pay for the infrastructure that's getting people to these ski resorts, especially with the profit margins that the ski resorts often see. we're putting the transportation burden, on the state to help people get there so they can make their profit. So kind of looking into those maybe opportunities as well, so that, the local governments aren't losing their funding for multimodal projects.
Any other questions, comments, input? This, I think, is a big item for the commission and the state to wrestle with as we try to continue the transit expansion and increase ridership. But we also need to be realistic and make sure the funding is there to actually do it and not rob other very needed funding streams to offset this one. So hope everybody stays engaged and brainstorming on how we can try to address this. So anything else for them? Okay, not seeing any others. Thank you, Kay and Jeff. I'm sure we'll hear about this more in the future. So thank you. Okay, that ends up the main agenda items. Other items, our next STAC meeting is scheduled for April 2nd at 8:30. That will be virtual. I did want to bring up one other item. I had a request from the Freight Advisory Council, which is primarily the freight industry working with the CDOT freight office. They would like to start getting reports from STAC at their FAC meetings. I have been involved with that group from previous involvement. And then they would also possibly like to include a STAC voting member on the FAC. Right now, they said that could be me since I'm chairman and I have been involved, but that would be something for the future for STAC to have with other chairmans or other people to represent STAC at the FAC. And then they'd also like to have a report given from that representative at our STAC meetings to try to get a little bit more interaction and sharing of information and ideas between the groups. So any input from the group on that? I see Holly raised her hand.
Actually, I think that's a great idea. And I also have another point of business after that.
Okay. So is there any feedback from the group on, I think especially the voting member? I think the information sharing can easily be done. The voting member on FAC from STAC, if there's a feeling of support for myself or future reps to have that ability to represent STAC in a vote on the FAC. Normally they're voting on project recommendations for the freight funding that comes to CDOT. Those are the main items that they're usually voting on, or other simple bylaw things or those things for their own group. But would be glad to hear feedback from anybody on that. Kristen.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have you represent Gary on that board, and I think it makes sense for the chair to do so.
Okay.
I don't know how others feel, but I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Seeing no other comments, we'll move forward with getting that cross information shared between the groups. So thank you. Okay, Holly, your other item.
Yeah, I still had one other thing. I believe we're electing new officers in May. And so I have the term limit blues, which means at the end of December, I'm no longer a commissioner. And so I'm no longer on Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board. So that would put the metropolitan planning organizations, DRCOG, Grand Valley, North Front Range, PCOG, and Pikes Peak, amongst the 5 of these MPOs, we should consider who might want to run for vice chair in May. So, which is a real bummer, but that's okay. It's just best to do it when the election is held in May. So, okay?
Okay. Well, thank you for that heads up, and we'll be looking for people to consider taking the vice chair role or the election for either one. I mean, it's open election, so don't want to preclude, but be thinking about that so people are prepared in May. Because we are supposed to have one kind of from the rural TPRs and one from MPOs as co-chairs, so one way or the other. So thank you. Any other items for the STAC? Okay, not seeing any, so we'll see everybody back on April 2nd, and everybody have a good month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.